Hello and welcome back to We Bought a Mic, a pop culture nope cast. Talking Jordan Peele's latest film, latest cinematic entry into the world of movies. We got for the YouTube watchers a little Easter egg here in the background, little UFO taking up the wabam to celebrate this great film.
So Nope has now come out a few weeks ago. You've spent, if I'm not mistaken, you've spent every waking moment since seeing Nope in opening night making that logo behind you, right? Is that correct?
Well, you could say I spent a very long time trying to get the shot to look right.
I'm sure you spent way more time than you needed to.
Got to get the shot.
You gotta get that UFO in the pic.
Welcome. My name's Ernest.
My name is Brian. Well, my name's Hunter, but Brian is actually going to be a guest on this podcast today.
Brian the cat
of the podcast. Yes, for the YouTube audience can just see my fat baby Bubba just hanging out right here, joining the party.
He really wants to get on that UFO action too, man. He wants to get that shot too.
I'm Drew, and I'm jealous that you can trust your cat to be in room with you. I might have to let her in to, like, if she has to take a shit pretty soon, but
Lucy,
that bitch is loud.
Let's get Lucy on. So yeah, we're remote today after yet another exposure to the old coronavirus. I am testing negative, but we do have COVID in the household. So hopefully by next week we can get back to Robin in person. That is the plan. But for now, we got to give you a little nope. Hunter, you took Jordan Peele in the coveted director draft episode. And, you know, we didn't know much about what this movie was back when we did this draft. But I think we knew enough that it was Peele. Peele was coming back with his third movie. I think at that point we knew the title.
Did we? Well, wait. When did we do the director? It was 2020, right?
Yeah, it was like early 2020.
No, so it might have been. I don't remember if we knew the title yet, but I know that we knew Daniel Kaluuya was back involved.
Right.
I do remember
Steven
that.
Yeun.
It was like, all right, he's coming back. I'm pretty sure Keke Palmer had been announced, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm in on this. And then the name came out. Nope. The poster came out, which is one of the best name poster combos in
Scary Cloud.
I don't even know how long. Cloud with the little tassel coming down from it.
He's really good at that. He's good at having like a specific motif that just like sells so well.
Yeah, no, I mean, just going back to Get Out, like the sunken place just was a thing. Us with the red jumpsuits and the scissors, like he knows that like marketing brain of his is so good at just knowing like I'm gonna have this thing that you can just do like an outline or see it from far away or hear it roughly described and know what it's referencing.
Image making, iconography. He's very good at that.
I need to see this again. I've seen Nope now twice in the theaters.
Same.
This might be the best Jordan Peele's done yet.
No
it's at least been the
way.
movie that I've been thinking about the most. Like I cannot stop thinking about this movie. Like I'm just always like I'm reading all of the think pieces. I'm like looking up the behind the scenes of Gordy's home. I'm just ingesting so much of this movie. I love it so much.
Yeah, I'm glad we waited a little bit to do our discussion about it, and we're not like coming right out of the gate with like a hot take review, because this is definitely one to like simmer on and run through all of the different emotions and thoughts that kind of come over you from this movie, because what I got from it the first time is very different from what I got from it the second time. You gotta give it time to like let it sit and let it kind of unfold itself in your mind
and show you its true form,
right?
If you will.
Exactly.
Its flowy, sort of blanket-like form.
Exactly.
Angelic.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful form. So yeah, I think we can give some kind of overall thoughts, but I feel like it's been long enough. It's been almost a month since the movie came out, but 3 weeks at least, that most people have probably seen it, and we can get into spoilers pretty quickly because I don't know how we're going to be able to really talk about this movie if we're trying to dance around spoilers. But yeah, I'll echo that. I really love this movie. I don't know if I'll put it number 1 for Peele. Probably number 2, just because Get Out is just kind of such like a pitch perfect, like Oscar-winning screenplay. I think this movie kind of stumbles a little bit in some of its storytelling choices. I think it could have made me care about some of the character arcs a little bit more. But in terms of like the scale of this movie, what he's going for, the themes, the ideas that he's going for, this is definitely the most ambitious, and it all clicks together a lot better than in Us. I think Us had a lot that it was trying to do, and it kind of had a harder time making it all sort of, make sense by the end. I love Us. I gave it a rewatch recently, and I think that movie is aging really, really well. But I think with Nope, he managed to deliver these heady ideas in way more kind of clear and effective ways.
I think a lot of that also comes down to tone management in this movie, because I agree. I love this movie a lot. It's hard to even compare to Get Out, because I think he's really showing that he's a very different filmmaker than what Get Out would imply. Like his evolution is really wild. But the one thing that no one talks about when you talk about the movie Us, let's talk about Us. Is that movie tonally is all over the fucking place. Not only does it end on like a way over ambitious note where like they're trying to over explain so much like broad sweeping like implied plot, and also like the social implications.
The monologue that Lupita gives.
Yeah, the last 20 minutes is Lupita. If it's not Lupita giving like one of the best performances of the last 5 years, it is rough. If you just are reading it on a page, it is a rough sequence.
That's pretty well agreed upon by people and discussed. But what's never discussed is that almost the first half of that movie is like too funny. It's like it's a good comedy, but it's like it's way too funny to get as heady as it does at the end.
Well, yeah, no, it's like a slasher. It's like a fun 80s slasher movie for so much of the movie. It's very over the top.
Every line Winston Duke says is a comedic line, and he's really funny in it. And it's like, obviously it's good comedy. It's just, you can't switch up like that. Or if you can, it wasn't done as well as it could have been done. And that, that seems to be sort of the general consensus about that movie, is it's a little all over the place. This movie, it tonally like is pretty consistent to me. And even though like within the movie we get comedy, we get drama, we get like fucking agony and tension, it does feel like it's all a part of the same movie. I think one of the ways he accomplishes that in this movie is pacing. Like this thing feels really measured throughout most of the movie. Like it feels like we're taking our time, easing into things. And I appreciated that, because this is a weird ass fucking movie, and I think it needs to feel weird. And one way to get the audience like, on the backs of their heels is to fuck with timing.
Yeah, and I think that the weirdness, it could go a couple of different ways. I think that there's going to be people, and there are people, I've seen some takes that aren't really clicking with this movie too much, because it's not really like a conventional horror sci-fi kind of movie. I think that one of the things that makes Peele special is that he's positioned himself as the type of filmmaker who is now at a place with his third movie that he is able to get weird. Like, as inspired as this movie is by Spielberg, Close Encounters, Jaws, and Shyamalan with something like Signs, it's also very anime inspired. And Hunter, you can get into the Neon Genesis Evangelion of it all too, because that was something that I didn't expect from this movie, is like, oh, this guy is like getting really weird, like anime nerdy weird. And I think that people, are not gonna fully click with that. And then on top of that, you're adding all these like really heady themes about like nature and art and trauma and commerce and spectacle. And we'll get into all of that, but it's like it feels really good to be hit with a movie in the middle of the summer that can do the big bombastic, kind of genre stuff, because it is like a UFO movie and it's doing all of that kind of eerie tension building stuff that you want from a movie like that. But then it's also embedded with all these deep ideas and coming off of something like Thor Love and Thunder, which I defended and like, you know, I can't like even come close to say that like that's a real movie when you have something like this. Like this is a real movie. This has like weight to it. And it makes something like that feel so just like airless and just disposable.
Mhm. I think for that reason, well, kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, one of the reasons why Nope is like kind of just as it's sitting in real time, it's becoming my favorite Jordan Peele project yet, is because like you said before, I think I drafted him second round of our director's draft, if I can remember back 2.5 years ago. And one of the reasons is because I knew that he had his best was yet to come.
Right.
And this is just like such a big step where he said, I'm not going to be the next John. Well, I could be the next John Carpenter. I could also be the next Steven Spielberg if I wanted to. Like this has the spectacle and original storytelling that you see that you used to see out of like the old greats, the Spielbergs, even the George Lucases, kind of those big tentpole directors, but doesn't really get made anymore. And this Nope is not a perfect film by any means. There definitely are some points, like you were saying, where I think the first act is like a little bit too long, and it's like, all right, we got the setup. Come on, like let's get into it. And then once it hits its stride, that last hour is just like fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
But this really elevated the potential that Jordan Peele has in my mind, because now I think that his ceiling is kind of limitless at this point. Like I don't know what he can't do if he's able to take these big heavy ideas and make them as digestible as he does in a film like this, that mass audiences can just like walk in and then leave and be like, man, that was a really fun alien movie. Also, I got really sad at that monkey and I can't explain why. And that's like how a lot of people in my theater were reacting to it. They like liked it, but they couldn't even put their thumb necessarily on what the aspects were that they liked about it. And that's what great filmmakers do. Great filmmakers don't need to necessarily make you like have to write up a billion think pieces and have to study what this symbolism meant in order to enjoy the movie that you're watching in real time. I think Get Out does kind of the best version, the best popcorn version of that. But Nope is trying to have more. I think everything in Nope has so much more weight to it than anything Get Out does, personally.
Yeah, it's because I think we're slowed down, and also Get Out's script is perfect. The I don't know, there's baggage that comes with having a script as perfect as that, because that means that everything has to tie up without question. Like that movie has such an impeccably delivered message that like, it was so original and out of nowhere that there ended up being like the billion think pieces and the spawns of new things. But that movie communicates its ideas really, really well. It's almost incredible like how he does that. But that's doesn't really seem to be what Jordan Peele is interested in doing moving forward. I think he had to sort of, in Us, I feel like he had the right instinct, and then at the end of the movie he sort of caved and didn't want everything to be vague.
Right.
But the primary critiques that I'm seeing of Nope seem to be coming from people who are, they're either unwilling or they're unable to accept the fact that it's just weird. It's a weird movie. Like it's fucking weird,
That's the Shyamalan to it. Shyamalan is at his best when he's like, here's a weird idea that I have, and I'm just gonna like go with it, and you're either gonna be on board or you're not. They go to a beach that makes them old. That's it. That's it. Okay.
And the story isn't insanely tightly wound. There is a little bit, there's like a side quest, like B plot that like it ties in very much thematically to what's going on. But a lot of people will be like, why did we even have to see that? I'm hearing that so much about this sequence that to me was just like a vision that Jordan Peele fucking had. And he was like, let me figure out how to put this in my movie. You know what I mean?
He tweeted he had a dream. It was in a dream that he had that.
It looks and sounds fucking incredible, and it has just unbelievable tension. That's why it's in the fucking movie, because that's what movies are made of. Like people are overthinking things way too much with this because they're expecting another perfectly delivered message from this script. It's like he's allowed to be as weird as he fucking wants. If the filmmaking is good, like you're still going to be watching and be interested.
Right. And also, I feel like you have to give the movie, like we said at the beginning, time to soak in. And I think this has the potential to be one of those movies that when you give it a decade, 2 decades, it's going to soak in even more. It's going to be wild to see how this movie ages. I mean, this is like kind of hyperbolic to even say, but even when you compare it to something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like the myriad ways that people read that movie and how heady and weird that movie is, like this has the potential to be something like that. And it's crazy. People are probably rolling their eyes thinking like, oh, this guy's fucking comparing Nope to 2001. But I feel like it's kind of not that Peele is trying to be the next Kubrick, because that's not what it is. He's Peele. He's just the next Peele. He's just doing his own thing. But in the vein of like a movie that you have to put yourself in a mode to give it that chance and give it that time and work, like have your brain work to figure things out and to piece things together. And it's not going to give you all the answers. And Peele isn't going to do fucking interviews for Collider or whatever the fuck to explain how Gordy fits into the movie. He trusts you to do it.
He did a whole Den of Geeks profile where he analyzed 78 Easter eggs in the film Nope.
He did a video with CinemaSins, actually shitting all over his own movie.
He went on Watch Mojo and went on the top 10 most understood things of Nope.
Yeah, like he's like, oh, actually, aliens are not known to exist for sure. So,
here's the thing. Like, I just think you're so right. Like, it's the sign of a good filmmaker when it's not necessarily everybody is piecing everything together at the exact same time. I think that the scene that we're kind of alluding to that some audience members aren't liking, I saw this film on opening night with Gaia, and she was very upset by the sequence that we're referring to because it is a very upsetting scene, and it doesn't
very intentionally upsetting.
On the surface, it does not necessarily directly relate to what you are seeing on the plot of the film. But then after the movie ended, we kind of talked about it a little bit. We both independently continued to think on that movie more and more as time went on. And it's my favorite scene in the entire movie. Like, I think it is one of the most affecting sequences and like the most glued to my chair that I have felt in the theater in so long. Like, I can't even remember the last time that struck that exact feeling in a movie theater.
Exactly. It's just, it's visceral, and I don't think that it's worth, like, I've heard people critiquing this idea because it is, like you said, he did end up saying that it was based on a dream. It is pretty clear that like this is a vision he had and he wrote to figure out how to include it. I don't care. Like, that's not a legitimate critique to me, just because like the visual came before the story. Like, not every story has to be written as if it's a jigsaw puzzle. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can go from vision to vision. And this movie, I think a reason that it works really well in this movie is because the movie has such insane restraint, like generally speaking to it. Like in every single scene almost until the end, he's giving you tension and tension and tension and then just moving on and not resolving it. So it makes sense for there to be almost this non sequitur sequence of just extreme tension that you're even wondering why it's there. Because we're in the middle of a movie of scenes that don't make sense until 3 scenes later. Like so it all fits together. It's just I think it's a little looser than people want. People want to cling so tightly to like, no, what is the thematic?
Yeah.
What are we getting here?
Well,
And
also
it's like,
there's multiple interpretations for what the movie is trying to say, and not one thing is just the one correct answer, right? It's like there's multiple interpretations.
and it is trying to say a lot, and there are thematic messages. Also, though, not every single scene or moment has to be tied to a message. This is a movie. This is a horror film. Like, you know what I mean? People are expecting to gain like a moral from this movie. I don't think I think it's asking more questions than it is answering anything.
It's interrogating so many different ideas of like what we like, how exploitative we are as a people, and
How we exploit nature, how we exploit natural life, natural even human life by insisting on recording everything. There are so many different
Yes.
angles, but I don't think that the point of this movie was to close up shop and be like, well, I figured it out. Jordan
Yeah.
Peele, have the answer to this. It's just him being like, isn't this shit fucked up?
Well, it's drawing connections between different things. It's like
Yeah.
you have our obsession with spectacle on one side, like that's a whole theme, and our need to
Yeah.
process trauma through spectacle. We have that addiction to content and to turning everything into content, and we have this like deep human desire to conquer nature and to try to control the chaos of nature. And he's just trying to draw these lines in connecting these dots. And yeah, it's not like I have all the answers. It's just like, isn't it interesting how a movie like this about a UFO can also be about all these things and how they're related to each other?
Yeah. Oh,
It's
and by the way,
genius.
it's like visually unbelievable, and it has unreal performances. And like I said, the tone and pacing are both fascinating. Like I really hate the discourse of just being so caught up on figuring out what exactly he's trying to say. What is the like if he's not trying to say anything with this scene, then why even put it in a movie? Like what? You need to get a
Yeah,
fucking
that's the
grip.
worst.
Well, it's because Jordan Peele has reached this level of filmmaker where people don't view him the same way they do some other indie art house director. People aren't asking, this is a bad example, but like they aren't asking Sean Baker, like, hey, can you explain everything that you were going for with Red Rocket and all of your motivations and everything else? Like they aren't expecting that from Jordan Peele because he had a budget of, how much was it on this? $68 million to make an original movie, which just doesn't happen anymore.
We love
So
to
because
see
of
it.
that, people, no, it's the best. But
I do want Sean Baker to explain how big Simon Rex's penis is.
oh, and he has frequently. That's the only thing he talks about.
This I feel like this movie is also a lot of it feels like Jordan Peele like on purpose sort of trying to buck that image that he has of like our modern like moral giver. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think he wants to be that. I don't think that was ever his intention. And so he made this movie that like very, purposefully doesn't close up a lot of its loose ends. And I think that fucking rules because like even movies that don't have loose ends, like it's just not fair to interrogate all of his movies in particular this one way. Like people don't ask like, people don't talk about Jaws as like a critique of capitalism.
Yeah.
Jaws is an entertaining movie to watch. Like this movie is entertaining as fuck, and it also does raise like extremely heady big questions, and they play into the movie. So I don't know. I feel
But like if you do watch Jaws, then you pick up on like, oh, this is actually just like really like scathing critique of just like the
absolutely.
mayor of this town is the worst human being in the world. Like, but you don't think about that. You think big monster.
Like the old man character, like what does he have to do with the theme? It's like no, it's just entertaining at a certain point. Like you also put in things that make movie. into movie.
Yeah.
It all the discourse around this movie has been really frustrating me because I feel like I'm going nuts being like, were you guys just even trying to enjoy
Well,
it?
it happened with us too. Like people were so fixated on like, well, how did they get the scissors and the jumpsuits? And what happens if spoilers for us if you haven't seen it, if the tethered control the people from above ground, like how are they functioning beyond the bounds of the caverns and the tunnels? It's like they're trying to apply all this logic to a movie that is like so symbolic and metaphorical. It's kind of a similar thinking of like Peele is not interested in like taking it all so literally. That's not really what he's about. He's more so interested in how it makes you feel and what it makes you think about. And that's the key.
Movies do have to follow some sort of internal logic, and it really feels like this movie does. Like I mean, like you said, Ernest, this is not a perfect movie by any means. It has little, like script inconsistencies, not in terms of like all the plot adding up. I wasn't so concerned with that. It was more, like you said, sort of making you care about certain characters or certain arcs. I will say one thing about Jordan Peele that's consistent in every movie now. He loves himself a super fucking stoic protagonist character.
Oh man, yeah, he does.
Kaluuya is like he's so quiet.
Kaluuya is a book you cannot read in this movie. Like he's so small in his acting, and it's so good.
I have so many, especially seeing this film a second time and like knowing where it's going and the plot beats, you can really everything that Kaluuya is doing, it's like, oh, it's Kaluuya is already probably my favorite actor alive right now. And then it's just like, oh, you have this other like change up that I did not know that you had in your arsenal here, that I was not expecting you to play like small, quiet horse guy who isn't incapable of making relationships with other human beings.
It makes sense in the context of this movie because this movie also is playing a lot off of traditional westerns, which always feature a pretty stoic protagonist,
right?
Cowboy. Yeah, that said, like at a certain point I was like, I need you to give me something. Your sister is worried about you.
Well, let's get into some more specifics. So if you haven't seen the movie, this is your final warning to go check it out. It is in theaters right now. Please go see it. See it on the biggest screen possible. This is one of those movies where like
it's big and loud.
Yeah, dark room, the sound design, the nighttime photography looks gorgeous in the theater. I
was gonna say before and this is a transition into spoilers, is that I think that we crowned it to Top Gun Maverick prematurely. And we were just like, give it all the technical awards, which still give Top Gun Maverick plenty of technical love. But the sound design of this movie is some of the most insane shit I've ever heard in my life.
It's so
like it truly
cool.
is like the depth. I saw it again in Dolby, and just hearing the layers in the sound in a Dolby theater, I was like getting my brain rocked by what I was hearing. I've never
fucking
heard
scary, man.
sound
It's
layering
terrifying.
like that. It's insane, truly insane.
Final spoiler warning. When we hear the what do we call it? The creature?
Well, it's not even, you aren't hearing the creature, you're hearing the screams that are inside of the creature.
Exactly. When the creature is flying over and you hear those screams, like the sounds of the screams, like it doesn't register. It's like all these layers of sound that when you're watching the movie for the first time, you don't realize exactly what you're hearing. It's just like almost like a wall of sound that's slowly coming at you as this thing is flying over. And then on the rewatch, every time I heard that sound, it was fucking horrifying because I knew that it was like all these people getting like digested.
It's like this mix of sound, and you can like almost try and pick it out whenever the scenes are like more defined, like they're inside or like it's aliens like closer up and everything, but like this mix of wind and horses neighing and also like different tones from humans of all kinds of different ages.
And like crunching of bones and
Yeah,
flesh.
it's insane. Like the layering of like, I just wish that I could just like see like an audio file of like all the different layers that are inside of
like
this
200
one.
tracks.
Put that shit on Audacity.
The technical side of it is unreal, and just the design of this spacecraft, which as it turns out is the extraterrestrial. That's a great idea in itself. Jordan's writing process with this movie especially is so cool to me because this movie, a lot of it is about exploitation and the exploitation of real life. He is taking so much shit out of real life and putting it in this movie. Like he's doing the thing in this movie.
The UAP discussion, the reference to the Navy videos.
Yeah, exactly. Like the character design and the way, particularly the way that this thing moves through air, is based directly off of the military videos that were released by the New York Times of, real unidentified flying objects that, they do not have any explanation for. Because one of my favorite, it's just like a weirdly little unsettling thing, is the way that this creature changes direction. It's like the laws of physics are not applying to it. There's no force applied, and that's exactly what's going on in that video with those little orbs that they're chasing, even though that's a super blurry video. Another thing that he's pulling from, which we'll get into, because he did make up this little, this animal handling studio being like the first, like, the first black owned. He made up a lot of that from whole cloth, which is really interesting. But a lot of the monkey story, there's a lot of stuff pulled from real life, even though this never obviously happened to like a child in a sitcom setting. The Charla Nash story from years back is definitely majorly at play, especially later on in the movie when you see the woman who had been attacked by the monkey, and she's wearing that visor. That's what Charla Nash wears when she goes out in public, to this day. So like his process, he is exploiting real stories while making the movie about how we exploit everything. I love it.
No, it literally is. I mean, there's so many different things. Even like the whole like, I mean, we would talk about with the what is the name of the actor who plays the cinematographer? But just like, I will die to get the perfect shot. I'm sure
Michael
that he like is
Wincott.
just like, yeah, Michael Wincott. I'm sure that he's like, this is my audience. This is my surrogate for the film, is that I will die doing whatever
Gotta
it takes
get
to
that
get the
shot, man.
It's golden hour.
I love how, because we're gonna talk a lot about Steven Yeun and that entire subplot, which to me, the idea of questioning why it's in the movie is insane because it's so cool. Every second of
It's
it
also
is the best.
Dude, the best sequence, like the best sequence.
So
of the year.
that
So
that
good.
sequence is your favorite. My favorite scene in the whole movie is when Steven enters into his shrine to the monkey and then gives the most disconcerting monologue about an SNL sketch where Chris Kattan plays the monkey.
Rushing.
Which again, pulling from real life, using
theater,
real cast members.
Literally in the theater, I was like, man, Drew's gonna love this. Drew's gonna love old SNL references. Talking Kattan.
Like, and one of my like 3 favorite actors right now too, just absolutely it's like a Lynch scene because what is being said does not match up with the tone or the way his face is, or the music being played. The music is scary. It's all scary. What he's saying isn't necessarily very disconcerting out of context, but in context, you're like, what the fuck? Why is he speaking so slowly and measuredly about this SNL sketch about his trauma? I wrote down it's my favorite like non-consequential scene in like years. It's my favorite scene that like you could argue it doesn't, it's not climactic. It's just pure fucked up. And it also comes out of fucking nowhere because you just see him as like a kind of a goofball up to that point.
Right. It is consequential in what one of the main themes of the movie is. Like it all clicks together.
It's very thematic. Well, that's the thing is, every second of Steven Yeun is thematically really important to the movie, but that isn't what a lot of people are sort of looking for when they're looking for things to be tied together. They're looking for, you know, A to B, and it makes sense for him to exist in the movie, but like to get into all that, I was over the fucking moon. You're so right, Hunter. My mouth was like on the fucking floor during that whole scene. I was like, what is going on? That room is like a liminal space. It's so dreamy. Like,
he
oh my
paid a
God.
couple like, or he charged a couple like $50,000 to sleep.
I love that. Like, I love the little detail that like people are weirdly obsessed with this. Like, in this world,
it's so realistic about how anything like that, if that were to happen, like this story, it would have this whole cult following. There'd be a fucking season of Serial that's about how did we allow this to happen. Like, there'd just be all this bullshit media that would be like tied up in the aftermath.
Well, and then looping back to the fact that Steven Yeun is exploiting his own trauma for the sake of entertainment, like not even just that of others.
That whole aspect that you just touched on about Steven Yeun exploiting his old trauma is like the most beautiful thing that this movie does, because fucking we all exploit our own trauma in some kind of way, shape, or form, and like of just like whether it's like self-masochistic or actually in like more of a really true way of using some traumatic experience that happened in your life to like sell a book or anything like that. And I'm not, by the way, not dismissing that. If something happened to you, you do you, and you promote that in any way that you need to.
No, Hunter, tell him how to deal with it. Go off.
But like, that's such an interesting idea that I've never actually seen like put into a film before. I've seen people exploiting other people. That happens all the time in movies. That happens all the time in real life, but not you exploiting your own trauma. That happens.
Well, just especially it's so fleshed out because it's a movie about exploitation, and then the fact that he then goes on, you can argue that that's a part of why he's spared by this monkey, because like in a way they're kind of both exploitation victims.
Exactly.
On this
TV
show. Child actors are mega exploited just as much as any animal. And so like, and also like, I don't know, there's so many connections in there that like once you think about them, and if you're talking to someone, even if not all of them are with intent, like you feel really good after you think of all of them, because you're like, oh wow. And the fist bump it's not exploitation of that predator. That's the agreement that Daniel Kaluuya is talking about that you have to have with one. The kid has the agreement with him of the fist bump, but it's not a part of the agreement to have like the fucking balloons popping and blah, blah, blah.
It's the idea, the theme of like trying to control nature, right? The chaos of nature, the hubris of thinking that they can take this chimp and domesticate it to the point where it can act on a television set is directly linked to Yoon's character Jupe thinking that he can do a whole show around the creature, around the alien, to sell tickets to.
Which, by the way, what a dumbass.
But that's America, baby. We just find ways to make that bag.
It made me wish almost that this movie was taking place in like the 90s, maybe, just because like, man, like fuck, like,
because if aliens showed up, that shit's happening. That's kind of the worst part that like left me with this movie, is like, man, I hate that this is probably as realistic as it's gonna get as humans' interactions to aliens. Like, could you imagine if like fucking Disney World discovered aliens first? Like it's done. Like it's fucking done. The D+ series of like following the spaceship around. It's almost
insane. It's almost just like too quaint what Jupe's idea to do with this animal is, where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna have an old-fashioned stage show with it. It's like, man, you're dumb as hell, bro.
I mean, it's the only thing he has resources to do.
Well, so did he make this entire theme park centered around this, like within the last 6 months while this has been happening?
No, yeah, they mentioned off cuff that like it used to be something else and they bought it out. So yeah, I think you might be right. But
my assumption was that there was a park there, so he probably bought it and did some rebranding.
Yeah, like once the alien thing started happening, he was like, "Oh, perfect."
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is my pivot. But like
You dumb
beforehand,
bitch.
it was like they said Kiki called it like it was like the gold mine or some shit like that. So they didn't have to do like much rebranding. And I'm sure that probably he got a fat ass settlement from the Gordy's home thing that he's just been like sitting on this
Chilling.
cash cow, waiting for
yeah.
the right time to strike. And he's like, oh, there's a nice spot open up in the
Yeah.
valley, a little amusement park. I'll just purchase that and see what happens.
Well, going back to your point, Hunter, about like how realistic it would be for an alien to show up and people just to try to like make a buck off of it. Like the idea that this movie essentially has its entire climax centered around what they call the Oprah shot. Like I love that because it's like we have proof that there are UAPs and UFOs, but no one is convinced that there's like actual aliens because the proof is not proof enough. So you need that Oprah shot to convince people that it's real. Like that's the priority for these people is like, we're going to get rich getting the most irrefutable, indisputable proof of alien life by getting that high quality, IMAX quality, crystal clear picture. And the entire climax of the movie is built around it. And that's actually my favorite part of the movie is the whole get the shot sequence, because like basically the same emotion that you said earlier you felt during the Gordy stuff, I was feeling during that. Like I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat, gripping the seat, like fully locked into this movie as Kaluuya is riding that horse, trying to bait the creature to fly in front of the camera so they can get that shot. And the way the music is set to that sequence, and just again the scale, the way it's shot, it's just like I've never seen anything like that before. That gave me a feeling of like, holy shit, I'm watching like a new thing right now, like a new standard for sci-fi, like blockbuster genre movie making. It really, really floored me, that entire sequence. It's incredible. And then everything that happens after that, when the alien actually opens up and reveals itself, is like really when the movie changes. Because I mean, talk about like not expecting it to go that way. Like, did anyone predict that A, the UFO was going to be a creature, and B, that it was going to look like that, like some beautiful like origami?
I was about to act up. I wish that thing would push me through its tube. You know what I mean?
Bro. I'm Michael Wincott over here. Like, suck me up, baby.
Let me see it.
Suck me. Put like a deep voice filter on me. Suck me up, baby.
Shit in the whole podcast talking like this.
Literally, he was cast on voice alone.
So he's like a classic, like a horror guy. And
yeah,
Wincott?
And voice actor.
Yeah, like a voice acting guy, obviously, with that voice. Brian, you fucking cannot. Jesus Christ. Sorry, Brian is all up in my business right now.
Pod.
So you're like, I've never seen the depiction of aliens before, like as just the ship is alien. Like that is just such a wholly unique and original idea. The way that it looks though, and the whole idea of like don't look it in the eyes, and how that ties back to like the first time we meet Kaluuya, where he's like, don't look the horse in the eyes.
Yeah.
Like that's just the whole thing.
Respect
and
nature.
A lot of animals don't like to be looked in the eyes. It makes them fearful. You look them in the eyes out in nature whenever you're like trying to fight, and it makes everybody defensive. And so the way that ties back around is just so well done. Kaluuya is like what he's doing in this movie as playing horse guy is just like a very specific type of person. And I can't imagine, because Kaluuya is like he's not like a method actor in an annoying Jared Leto kind of way, but he is a method actor in that he wants to do as much research about the roles as possible. And I'm sure he's directly modeling his performance after just being around horse guys, because like if you've ever spent a lot of time, like I have some family that's from kind of the country of South Georgia and everything. And there's a lot of people I know, like cousins of cousins and shit like that, that are like, they feel closer with like their farm animals than they do with other human beings. And they're just like, usually don't speak very much because they don't really have much to say or like much thought on like politics or pop culture or anything like that. They're just like, I take care of the pigs. That's what I do, is I take care of the pigs. And
Hunter's
so
like
like
serial killer family.
it's just it's just a very specific type of person that he's channeling, and it's so good. Like it's so well realized. And it's not in any kind of a showy way. It's interesting that like this is the first performance I've seen him in since Judas and the Black Messiah.
Which is
And
this like kind of
those
powerful
two polar ends of each other, it's like, oh, this is why you're just the best actor
Yeah,
alive. It's because
number
you
one,
have
dude.
that range right there.
And luckily the intense like stoicism and quiet of that character gets balanced by Keke Palmer, who like, you know, we're on record being big fans of her. Her character is really interesting to me because the way she is introduced, I wasn't super stoked to get to know that character much more, because it's this weirdly, considering the rest of that script, her introduction is so super written, as like she is coming in and she's like being the most, and that doesn't turn out being exactly what her character is. Like her character has restraint to her. She has way more you know, she's way more extra than fucking Kaluuya is, because he's giving you, you know, he's giving you weird guy mode. um but that's why I really really enjoyed once her character stabilizes out later in the script and we get introduced to Angel, who I thought absolutely killed it. Like this guy,
yeah, the
what's his name?
Fry's Electronics guy, Brandon Perea. Perea?
He was, you know, he was a total unknown for me before this, and I thought he absolutely knocked it out of the park. I do think that Dave Franco needs to fire his agent,
Right.
Because this role, Dave Franco was this role is a Dave Franco type.
It's a perfect guy to just come in, and it's like it's a perfect dynamic there where like he's just there to help, but he doesn't know exactly what he's helping with.
He just, yeah, he serves his purpose perfectly. Whereas like in Us with Winston Duke, like at a certain point, like halfway into the movie, when he's still making dumb jokes, I'm like, shut up, man. Like shit is going down already.
Right.
Even though like he's perfect in that movie. It's just that the script that kind of bugged me at a certain point in that movie. Angel, I feel like this movie is never trying to be pure comedy. So anytime Angel inserts some into it, I think that it's well received, at least in my case. Like
Yeah, you always need that kind of comic relief a little bit, and people are expecting that from Peele too. Like we know that
absolutely.
Peele is
wants to do that.
funny
And
guy.
it softens the edges of this absolutely insane cinematographer character, because
Watching like coarse film of animals mauling each other.
yeah, we need someone like Keke Palmer can't be the only person representing us looking at that guy and being like, what in the fuck is your deal? Like we have to see someone on screen acknowledging how absolutely weird that man is, because that man is so weird.
Yeah, and they form a little bit of a crew at the end there. They're like a little 4-person film crew. That's another thing that this movie just throws in there. It's also like a love letter to movie making and like below the line crew. And it's just like you got your cinematographer, you got your on-camera talent, you got
Angel's the best boy.
Yeah, you got your AD with the.
Do you think Deakins watches this and he's just like, you know, I'm still waiting to find my shot?
Oh hell yeah! No, he did. He found it.
Don't you fucking mention Blade Runner 2049.
So structurally, this movie it's really weird, because before we get to that point, which is like the third act is like this little crew coalescing and becoming a thing. The movie shows you the worst thing that it shows you, which to me wasn't even the monkey sequence, it was everyone being fucking digested.
Dude, that is such a
Terrifying.
claustrophobic scene. And the way
that's
that
like
it's
an
set
instant
up too,
classic shot to me.
Yeah.
it's set up in just that, that fun way. It's the shot, a few shots from the trailer of them gathering everybody in that little outdoor theater
Mhm.
area for the show. And when you first see this thing just suck everybody up, because that's also the reveal that that's not a ship, that's a creature. Like,
Right.
and that all happening right kind of on top of each other. It's so well done. I mean, again, talking about the sound, whenever they are inside of that ship,
The
the way that
screams.
there's almost like this like plastic
Yeah.
sound
Well, it's like
to
a
it too. Like
fabric.
it's
Yeah.
well, that's how it looks, but like in the theater, like I don't know how it sounds like they recorded the audio almost in like a very poorly like it wasn't recorded like in a sound studio with like good sound production around it. Like there was something almost like
Kind of old school.
plastic and like it just sounded almost kind of flimsy sound to it, and it adds to like that air flowing, that whooshing that you're hearing along with just kind of the visceral guttural noises.
It's so cool. I love the way the thing, let's just call it jean jacket, like let's respect the fucking thing.
Yeah.
That's
Jean
right.
jacket.
I love the way jean jacket moves in that first scene when you see it swoop down. It follows a lot of like fluid dynamics, almost like it's a stingray. The way
like
that it kind of
around.
cuts through the air. Yeah. And then, man, inside that tube, I couldn't stop thinking about how fun it would be to do the production design of actually building that physical tube, because that is not that's not a screened in thing. They built that tube, and those people are like crawling through it weirdly.
So good. I mean, it looks like
It'd be a
they're
fun day on
getting
set.
like sucked up through a straw.
Yeah, and there's like a ton of like sand and dust in there because he sucked it all up. You can see it all over. It's just fast, and you can almost hear like gurgles and burps. Like it's like you said, like it's just layers on layers on layers of like what this would sound like. And then when you're outside of it, when you hear them flying around, it's almost like they're amplified through it. Like you can just hear like, ah!
Yeah, well, it's that sound of like screaming at the end of a tunnel.
Yeah.
Like that's almost the sound effect that it's making. It's echoing.
Yeah. So it fascinates me that like almost like toward like end of first act / maybe beginning of second, it gives you the monkey thing. Then end of second act, it gives you this like full digestion, and then raining blood on the house, which is absolutely
Dude,
sick.
so that's
That
if
shot
it's not the monkey thing, that shot is like
just hovering.
like that entire sequence. My hands were just like covering my mouth, my eyes. And I was like, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my entire life. Like, I don't know how
so
he
cool.
got this shot of just the blood raining down the house, and then Daniel Kaluuya stepping out in the fog. I was like, oh my God, what am I
when he's
looking
in
at
the car and he looks up and he's like, nope.
I did
He
have
just
at
waits
one
it
point I
out.
was like, is this the most beautiful movie ever made? I had this thought to myself right around this sequence.
So the cinematographer for this movie, do y'all know his name? He is
Hoyte
like
van Hoytema.
yeah, he's the like premier IMAX guy in
Mhm.
Hollywood right now. Like
this guy is buff enough to put an IMAX camera on his shoulder. Like he just walks around
He's
with a
huge.
fucking shoulder
Just a-
mount
he
IMAX
trains
camera.
he goes to the gym and puts dumbbells like on his shoulder and just like walks around the gym.
He worked mainly with Nolan. He's shot like a ton of Nolan stuff, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet.
Yeah. So this movie is so wide
and
like
tall
it's so
too. Like those nighttime sequences early on where you don't really know what's going on yet. When he's kind of out there with the horse trying to figure out like what's out there, that's some of my favorite stuff cinematography wise, because you haven't kicked into that gear yet of just like high energy. You're still in that like kind of building tension mode, and to pair that with the look of the movie in those scenes is perfect, because the way it just kind of sits there and holds on these exteriors of this valley, and the way they managed to make it look at night in this just expansive kind of bluish nighttime. I've never seen anything like it. It's stunning. It's stunning. You're kind of looking around, seeing this in IMAX. It's like, it's such a tall screen
you're
that you're
just
kind
looking
of
all over the
you're like,
screen.
where is it? Where the fuck is it? It's gonna fly out of one of these corners.
It's also though, like, I mean, there is that whole aspect of like, you're just, especially after seeing it the first time, I'm like always looking for the cloud in the shot
That
of just
damn
like, wait, where is
cloud.
it? Where is that fucking cloud?
Scary
But
cloud.
it does this, and the only other movie that I can think of in recent memory that does this super well is Nomadland, of capturing that Western feel to it. Like, there's something about, if you've ever been out in the West Coast, or if you live out in the West Coast and come east, then you'll notice it, that just once you reach a certain point heading Midwest towards the West Coast, the sky just feels bigger. I
Yeah.
don't know, you're higher up in elevation, so you're closer to the curvature of the earth. I don't know what exactly it is, but if you've ever been anywhere out west, the sky just feels insurmountable. It feels so huge. And this movie, I mean, especially because so much of it is flipping the camera up and just looking up at the sky, but it captures how vast and endless that sky, especially like the nighttime sky, can feel whenever you are out there in the West.
There's a theory that I wanted to ask you guys about that I don't know if I agree with this, but I think it's worth kind of like at least discussing. How crazy is it that Gordy, they make allusions to him being a chimp that goes to space, right? He's very good at space flight. Is Gordy an alien? And is he related to Jean Jacket? And is Jean Jacket seeking revenge for the heinous murder of Gordy? And is that why Jean Jacket is targeting these humans, specifically Steven Yeun?
Do you want the short
No.
answer or the long answer?
It's a
Because
no.
the short answer is no. And the long answer is
Um,
also no.
It's
So.
there. I mean, the thing, yeah, this is a part of a lot of, you know, theories that are becoming about trying to find a more firm connection between the two plot lines. I definitely don't think that it's an alien. If this, the thing is though, if they've established that it's been to space, maybe it's just come into contact with Jean Jacket, and Jean Jacket was just like, oh, funny
Cute
monkey,
Gordy.
I follow it. I follow it back to Earth.
By the way, we don't know if Jean Jacket is even an alien. They never say, like, I'm glad that this movie doesn't have like the scientist guy.
It actually,
comes
yeah, no,
in.
there's a post-credit sequence, and it's like, actually, that's the FBI.
Yeah, into the
That's-
Nope.
Remember?
verse.
Do you guys remember the end of Old?
That's actually what's,
Oh yeah.
dude.
God.
I think about it
Holy
every
Oh,
night
shit.
before
no.
I tell a bedtime
Flashbacks.
story every night to make myself go to sleep, and it's
It's
just the
so
end of
insane.
We could have
It's-
ended
and
the movie, M. Night. The movie was
And-
over.
it's just like, that's the thing, is this type of movie where it gets into all of like the power of cinema, blah blah blah, like getting that shot. This could have been so obnoxious, you know,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's not, like,
Yeah,
thinking
M. Night
about how
It's a
M. Night makes
miracle.
Nope, and it keep like they show up to where they're at, where Kaluuya and Keke are, OJ and M, and
Mhm.
there's like a bunch of like secret like FBI, CIA, Defense Department guys that come in and just take over the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
No,
and one of them,
you know
one of
what-
them
you
is
know
played
how
by
the-
M. Night. M. Night is like the head of it.
No, you know how the M. Night version of this ends is that we zoom out and we realize we actually aren't on Earth at all. We're the aliens, and we're on their
Whoa.
planet.
Well, okay, on a serious note, though, you're all touching on something here, because this movie ends and presumably the giant jupe blow up kills Jean Jacket. Jean Jacket tries to eat the blow up thing and explodes. So
Mhm.
there are some thematic ideas here at play of like, they're trying to get this shot. They want to get the Oprah shot. It looks like they got it. We don't know if it's gonna actually like
I'm
purely
a
thing.
spoiler alert now. It's not going to go anywhere.
Nope,
People are going to be like, that's Photoshop.
the journey to convince they go on Fallon, they go on Kimmel, they're trying to like talk about the shot.
They try and go on
Oprah,
and she's like, I'm sorry, I have a whole thing set up with Prince Harry, so like
yeah,
I'm
I
kind of
can't.
booked.
Sorry, but this idea of like they're in it just for the grandeur of the spectacle, right? They want the glory, they want the riches. OJ also wants to be at peace. We haven't mentioned Keith David yet, plays the dad, wants to be at peace with the death of his father and wants to find
really cool death in the very beginning.
Yeah,
God.
fucking coin through the eyeball. That's fucking
extremely
gnarly.
cool.
I often tell people that's how I want to go out.
Yeah.
Before this movie, I was even saying
ways.
just throw a coin so hard at my face that it's just.
Well, really, it's like poop out a coin so hard.
Yeah, can you poop a coin into my eyes so hard that I die?
Perfectly, just right through it. And so they have these reasons why they want to get this shot or why they want to capture this thing, make sense of it, control it in some way, control the chaos, and they end up killing it. And so what that is kind of saying is that like at the end of the day, we're the monsters. This is a monster movie. You know, you got Jaws, we're hunting Jaws. And at the end, it's like, this is kind of a beautiful creature whose nature we don't understand. And we fail at comprehending it. So all we can do is destroy it because we don't understand it.
It's also sort of like at the end of the day, if the thing is coming after your ass, like
if it's sucking up all your friends,
you know, it's like,
yeah.
Like you're not like necessarily mad at Kiki. You're like, well, I mean, it was her, the fucking thing.
You aren't gonna be like, oh man, I really wish that they could have found a way to communicate with this creature.
Yeah.
It also does sort of play into the the idea that maybe he was more than just like sort of roaming the territory here. Maybe he was sort of a watcher. And we like humans were an amount of spectacle for him because I think the biggest piece of evidence to back that up, because it is brought up in the movie, but that's just it's just lost in the sea of like what ifs going on in this fucking movie. But the biggest piece of evidence is that once Jean Jacket fully unfurls and becomes that insane shape, still the opening like maw is like a perfect camera aperture square.
Those are the opening credits of the movie.
Square.
When you're going through the fucking esophagus and you don't even know it.
That's so good of the beginning of the movie of like a thing you never would have thought of twice, and then seeing the movie a second time and you're like, oh my god, that's the mouth. I'm going into the creature.
Which, by the way, when you get to the end of the credits and it says written, directed, and produced by Jordan Peele, I was like, fuck yeah, motherfucker.
I'm in. Let's fucking go, baby.
Ernie, you should put that at the end of these videos.
At the end of every podcast, you should put written, directed, and produced by Ernest Calderon. I will say this is like kind of a little bit of a sidebar based on what you were saying, but it's tying back to something we were talking about earlier. I love how unafraid Jordan Peele is to just wear his influences on his sleeve. That's one of my favorite things about him. Like,
are you going to get into the anime of it all?
Well, I mean, even before I get into the anime of it, like going back in all of his films,
I want to hear this.
The influences are everywhere. If you didn't know that that Jordan Peele was inspired by a little guy named Steven Spielberg by the Close Encounters of It All, they literally kill the monster the same way that they kill the shark in Jaws. Like the same way of we're going to blow it up from the inside. Like they are just trying. He is completely unafraid to try to pay homage to people who he's inspired by. Whenever the kids are dressed up like the aliens and they show up, which by the way,
great scene.
Such a great scene.
So creepy.
Everybody in the theater, that had the get out moment in the theater of everybody being like, oh, fuck this. Oh no, what the fuck? When you just see the guy just stick his head out the side of everybody, just no, man, like I'm not doing that. That's just straight up out of Signs, like that whole sequence, but anime is all over this movie. My guy loves some anime, and we love him for it. The big thing was the big piece that was going around on Twitter was a literal shot-for-shot remake of the bike slide from Akira.
Yeah.
That Keke
Akira.
Palmer does whenever at the end of the film, right before she gets the shot. But the creature that we see at the end of this movie is basically an angel from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like, if you have ever watched that show, by the way, do it. It's 23 episodes and it's the best series ever. Like,
Yeah,
it's up there with just
this is gonna make
non-anime
me
and anime.
finally want to watch it because
It's like the best. It's one of the best television shows ever made. But it's so clear what he's trying to do with capturing this like evil creature that could spell the doom for humanity. And if you just look at it, it's so beautiful and like you cannot take your eyes away from it, even though you know that it's just like wreaking so much destruction on all of the world around it and what it means for like human beings. But then at the same time, human beings are kind of the reason why this monster is wreaking havoc in the first place. How that ties in is it's so well paid homage to in this movie.
Does Evangelion get into that idea of like by looking at it, you're sealing your fate, like you're kind of securing how doomed you are?
I mean,
not
not
necessarily.
directly in the same way of like don't make eye contact with it, but in the way of like being almost paralyzed by it at a certain extent, which is, I mean, especially towards the end of the movie, there's been a few things I've read online of like, why does it show its true form at the end? And the way that I saw it is just like, it's like a peacock like showing its feathers or like any
It
animal
was
out in
pretty clear to
nature.
me.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people who just didn't. They're like, why didn't it just look like that the whole time? And it's like, well, because
I was thinking
they don't
about like
need to look
a
like
Gila
that.
monster,
You're right.
Yeah, just whenever you're out in nature, like especially a predator wants to get your attention in some way to distract you so that they can kill you.
And most of the movie, it's trying to fucking hide.
Also, the point you made at the beginning, Drew, just it's a movie.
it just looks beautiful.
It's just better to save that for the fucking end of the movie to shock you and leave you with like that feeling of like, oh my God, what have I witnessed?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention about the creature. So I think Jean Jacket is gonna be like, again, like I probably sound like such a fucking douchebag, but like the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey, like for years to come, people are gonna find so many different ways to break apart and decipher what Peele is trying to say with this creature and what it represents and what it symbolizes. And I'm going to be so curious to see like what people take out of this movie as it ages. And right now, the biggest thing I can think of is honestly like Bo Burnham's Inside, and specifically some of the interviews, because I listened to Dissect, the podcast that usually dissects albums, but they did Inside. So Cole Kushner talks a lot about like the visual component, obviously, of Inside, and a lot of the interviews that Bo Burnham did kind of informing the ideas that he's conveying in Inside. And one of the things that to take away from what Bo is saying in that, and what Cole touches on, is the idea of like the eye of the camera, the lens of the camera, and what it does to you, and what happens when you look at it psychologically, when you make eye contact with the lens of a camera, and how paralyzing it can be, and how it's almost like the eye of God staring into your soul, and how it literally like changes how you behave and how you act, and what you do when you know you're being recorded. And I could not stop thinking about that watching this movie, and just thinking about this creature being a symbol for the eye of a camera, and this idea of like not wanting to look into the lens of the camera because otherwise you're sealing your fate, you're dooming yourself to destruction essentially. And that just ties into like all of these concepts and ideas about like art, addiction to content, and turning everything into content. And it just set my fucking gear spinning, because there's a lot of connective tissue there with that idea with Inside. And also we should talk about the TMZ guy. What do you guys
I
think
was gonna
about all
bring that
that?
up because that obviously that's like, arguably the most heavy-handed part of the whole movie, is him showing up, toward the very end just to really cement certain things.
The whole idea of like you'll do literally anything to get the shot, or because I mean that's a whole thing is if you work for TMZ, if you get like hired to be a person to get a shot of something like that, if you don't get the shot, you're just fired. Like that's just kind of it. That's the whole thing. TMZ is literally
Yeah.
a corporation that's made to exploit. Like that is the purpose of TMZ. See the lawsuit that's happening in Los Angeles right now because they broke the news about Kobe Bryant dying before Kobe Bryant's family could find out. Like that
Oof.
is their whole MO.
Once I heard the analysis from the person who had formerly worked at TMZ, in which like he said, yeah, that's pretty realistic to what someone would actually act like who worked at TMZ. I sort of accepted that scene a little bit more, because at first I was really just annoyed by that guy.
It's a cool look. I love the mirror helmet. That's fucking awesome.
Chrome helmet. Yeah.
It was even like his audio is mixed so loud, like his
Yeah.
voice is louder than anyone else's, and so him to just show up and looks creepy as hell. His acting is a little too much for me, I guess.
You can't see his face though. Like you kind of have the actor's like doing what he can with, having his face covered up.
No, I know. Yeah, it's more just like if I were to delete anything at all, it would just be, oh, my camera, my camera. Like a lot of, and that seemed like I sort of heard some snickers in the theater when that guy was like on screen, where it was like, okay,
Well, it
Black
is.
Mirror.
It's kind of funny though. I thought I took it like I was a little bit laughing at like this guy's so ridiculous right
Yeah.
now, and of course he's like this character showing up during the big climactic sequence. We have to deal with this fucking guy right here, TMZ Chrome helmet guy. Driving. Of course, he's driving an electric bike. Go fuck yourself, my guy. Like, who even are you?
Well, you need the bike to set up
Yeah.
M having
No,
it later.
it works out perfect, but like it's yeah. Ernie, I do want to go back, and I'm going to join you on Pretentious Island here, because whenever you talked about the monolith from 2001,
Yeah.
it's you're setting yourself up to be ridiculed in some way, shape, or form.
Fucking
But
film
like
bros.
I can't overstate the fact that I thought that I had seen every single way that aliens could be done.
Right.
I thought that I'd seen it all. Like I really thought like I've seen, I don't know, probably 100 alien movies at this point, from everything from a movie like Alien, where there's a little creature, to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, to like everything. But I've never seen aliens done like this before. And that is kind of the same type of thing. At least not even just from what it means storyline wise, but aesthetically, it's just a whole new take. And I thought that we had kind of
that's
reached a point where we were a little bit rudderless of what you could do for this type of story. And this movie just made me inspired of like, oh no, I can still be surprised. I can still be totally swept away and see things I've never seen before.
Yeah, there are sequences and shots and ideas that like are legitimate new entries into like general horror canon, general like, I guess like you could call it like blockbuster canon, just like big cinema canon. There, like, he has new angles in every movie he does, but this movie introduces a lot of new, like, it would be one thing if it was just like one of the several, but like all over this movie there are shots or just like images that really they struck me as like, oh wow, that's like that's like that'll end up in a montage someday. You know what I mean? Like that's significant.
I think that Jordan Peele, he's at like this interesting point with this film in particular, and I really hope that he kind of reaches this exact level of ambiguity in his movies moving forward, because I like that we aren't going full David Lynch where like a lot of stuff is just confusing for the sake of being confusing and stuff like that. Say that from the bottom of my heart as loving David Lynch. We aren't in his us side where we're over explaining everything. And we also aren't in like, I don't know. I think of something, as much as I love this movie and I had it in my top 10 movies of the decade, but even like Denis Villeneuve's Enemy, where it is so neat and you can just wrap it all up in a box and figure out every single metaphor and what it means if you watch a 12-minute YouTube video. I like that this is a little bit messier than that. It's not
exactly
so overly ambiguous that you are having to just constantly game theorizing everything, because as much as I love movies that do that whenever they are done well, Jordan Peele is doing something different than David Lynch. Jordan Peele is making movies that can make $100+ million at the box office. And that I want him to keep doing that. I want him to be the next great tentpole original filmmaking blockbuster director that we have.
Yeah.
But I like that we have some ambiguity in there, because you don't get those two things at the same time.
It's all about what he's interested in doing moving forward, because obviously if he wanted this strictly to do well, he would have done things a little, there are tweaks he could have made to make it more digestible for people, and he didn't want to, because he's like a vision first guy. He wanted to make the movie that he thought of,
which we're lucky. We're lucky this isn't a studio notes movie.
I really appreciate the vagueness. I appreciate the frayed ends of this movie. I don't know. It's there are two different types of vague movies. There, and it's the types that afterward, when you think about it, you get mad, and afterward, when you think about it, you like it more. And this to me is like so clearly one that gains steam in your head afterward, because you can be rawly entertained by it, and miss out on a lot of the heavier things going on, or at least like pay less credence to them, which like I would highly recommend if you're someone who watches movies for entertainment purposes, because this is entertaining.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel, but this almost felt like Jordan Peele trying to say like, hey, I'm not just a horror director guy. Like, this feels
not just that, but
that.
I'm not Get Out.
It's definitely, he's moved past the whole like I'm a socially aware director, which I think is kind of an unfair label that would only get put on because he's a black director. And
but this movie still has that connective tissue. Like, this movie is about descendants of like the first black filmmaker, essentially.
No, it has that, but it's also not like in like a preachy way of it's not trying to be like overly preachy, and none of his films have been preachy.
It's just clear, it's not. But no, this movie is not about a social issue in the way that especially Get Out is. But it's also because like his success has spawned studios to try to imitate it in the worst ways possible, in which movies are released with the message coming way before the script is even written, like, and that is like the exact wrong way to come about a project. Like the moral comes before even an idea for a story in a lot of movies now. And
it's people thinking of what people are going, the take home message of it's going to be before anything
and
else comes.
And that was never Jordan's MO. And so like the industry has tried to pigeonhole him in a million different ways, and he's saying no. I can do a lot of different shit. This movie felt like the most classic cinema in a ton of ways. Particularly like I don't think that slowing down the pacing was just for weird effect. I think this movie, it made it feel like it came from the 70s or 80s. It felt from a different decade, stylistically in a lot of ways, despite having a good amount of currency to it. So I think I think he's a dude who will consistently buck whatever we are thinking he's going to do next. And I absolutely love that. I think he has a fascinating mind. There's obviously, because of Key and Peele before this, there are so many videos you can watch with like dramatic irony now, because you know what we know about him now, but back then we didn't know. And it's fucking fascinating, because I've listened to like a lot of in-depth interviews of him talking about, comedy, like he and Peele, and like there are little snippets here and there where like Keegan Michael Key will be like, yeah, well, I mean, Jordan has like the Rain Man thing, like he's like a different type of human. And it's like, huh, interesting.
He's still waiting by that phone.
Yeah.
If you ever get around to it, Jordan,
Oh,
he doesn't have
Keanu too. Keanu
I-
2's coming.
No, but so the reason why I brought that up though is because I could really see his next movie being like, it's not horror at all.
right.
Because I think that this is the least horror of any movie that he's made. And I think that he's trying to kind of, when you make your first movie, Get Out, and he was already starting to work on Us whenever Get Out had come out. But like, you have those first two movies and people are like, you're the horror guy, you're doing horror things. And there's a lot of, I feel like it's one of those same reasons why Marvel kind of targets horror directors, like indie horror directors, to come in and make their little Marvel movies, is because making horror movies doesn't necessarily mean that you're just only good at making horror. It means that you are really good at creating tension and creating suspense. And this movie is more suspenseful than it is scary at any point in its runtime. And so I wouldn't be surprised if his next movie,
the Gordy stuff is pretty scary if you're not, especially if you're not fucking ready for that kind of shit,
Yeah, well, it's scary, but like, I don't know, it's more upsetting than scary.
Right.
I think that honestly the best like horror scene is that scene with the kids dressed up like aliens.
It's
like,
shot, it's shot like a traditional kind of horror sequence.
Yeah. And I think that because the movie, part of the way that's marketed, and just because it's an alien movie, so much of it's set at night, you can still like kind of capitalize on those horror expectations going into a movie like this. But I would not be surprised if his next movie, if he's just like, I want to make something completely different, and maybe there'll be a sequence here or there that has some horror type themes to it, but I just want to make a completely original blockbuster of some other kind, and it's not going to have any kind of like horror preconceptions.
Because this man, I mean, he could make the shit out of whatever, and I'd watch it. We know his chops in comedy, but he could make an action movie. Because another reason that they go after horror people with something like Marvel is you do have to use some amount of effects, whether they be practical or special, in most horror. As opposed to like if you just make like an indie dramedy, it can really just be a lot of shots, non-dynamic shots of people talking. Horror requires a lot of dynamism, even at a low level. And he's at the highest level, doing the highest level of filmmaking, that we have right now. So I think the sky's the limit for him, and I don't even want to try to predict what he's got next, because I want him to prove whatever I say wrong,
Kind of going back to the whole like exploitation thing, and basically like if we see these characters are exploiting the alien for their own gain, what is the difference between how OJ exploits it and how Jupe exploits it?
OJ is not a fucking idiot.
Well, because they're both rooted in trauma, right?
I know.
Like,
no, you're right.
Like they're both trying to accomplish the same thing. They're both trying to capture the spectacle of this
OJ
creature.
Well, the thing is, in order to quote unquote reach an agreement with the beast the way that OJ does, he has an immense sense of empathy for it. Like, he understands how it feels. Yeah. And Jupe does to an extent, but he is also, the way that he's exploiting it, is super kitschy and like lame to watch, and almost like, it's like putting a bull in a rodeo. It's like offensive to the bull almost. You're just like tying its nuts up and making it jump around. Whereas, OJ is doing something a lot more naturalistic. He's literally just trying to get it to be itself, but on camera.
Yeah.
And and he understands how to do that without, making it fucking mad. I don't know, because people are stupid with animals. People really don't take the time to
It's
understand the rules of different animals. Like it is a set of rules. And it does sort of relate back, like you were saying, to the laws of nature. This movie reminded me a lot of the book Ishmael, which is all about how every organism on Earth follows a set of rules that humans don't. And that's why we're fucking everything up. That's sort of
There's
what the
an
movie's
order to
about.
the chaos. And I
Yeah,
think that
exactly.
as a horse wrangler, OJ understands
Yeah,
that.
OJ is like, we have to follow the rules with this thing, even if we're trying to like get it. Like
Right.
we still have to know our place.
Yeah. OJ's not like, we should let horses just be wild animals. Like we can use them, but we need to understand that, or at least even if we don't understand them, understand that they're beings they are autonomous beings
it's
that we can't
empathizing.
overpower.
Yeah,
You have
it's
to-
still you're still empathizing with it as a living creature. And I mean, there's that whole thing about, OJ is like trying to save up money so that he can buy back his horses. He has no idea that
He ain't getting them back.
fucking Steven Yeun has just been fucking feeding his horses to this alien creature this whole time. And I mean, towards the end of the movie, he's just like, I'm not just going to sacrifice a horse so that we can get this shot. Like, I will risk my own life to prevent the life of this animal dying. What's more of an interesting idea? So, like, I was thinking about this because Steven Yeun is like, has this whole thing of like, every time they come out here and I feed them a horse and everything else like that. So, Steven Yeun is just like laying the bait for this shark to come, right? Like
for the show.
He is just the entire reason why this is all happening.
It's
like it's like fucking like Gatorland
happened once, and then pretty much it's Gatorland.
I wanted more Steven Yeun in this movie. Like that shot when he looks up at Jean Jacket and before he gets sucked up is a great shot.
He's the best fucking actor in the damn world. I swear, guys.
We
like,
never
see
him again. That's the last time we see him. I'm like, no, I wanted more from you.
Well, he did die in that scene.
I know, but it's like,
unfortunately,
it's just like there's a whole other half of the movie that he's just not in, and it just kind of
I know.
my heart.
That's the paradox of using Steven Yeun.
Well, one
I will simply want more of Steven Yeun.
I did want to bring up one nitpick, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning about, not getting enough emotional setup from some of these characters. Is like at the end, there's a moment where they're like, the two siblings, OJ and M, are like staring at each other and they're doing this eye thing to each other. And there's that beat kind of lingers a good bit. And my editor brain kind of kicked in and I was like, we're getting a lot of shots of these two like staring at each other. And I'm not feeling it.
I know exactly what you're talking about because it was making me think about like montage theory. And it's like, oh, well, if you cut to this and then this, people will know that they're related. And it was like, I don't know how these shots are related. I don't know what they're trying to say.
Well, it's trying to be a payoff to something that wasn't well set up. They must have cut out a lot from this movie to make it like more of a palatable runtime, because you do get that one small flashback to them as kids, and they probably cut like everything that they shot.
I'm sure
of
there
those
was a
kids
decent
out,
amount, and there's like, we're gonna add in 3 lines.
So you're getting this payoff at the end of them like staring at each other and having this like sibling bond. And I was like, I wish that this was set up more, because throughout this whole movie, I've been invested in the ride. It's been a fun ride, but I'm not really connecting to these two people as much as I want to. And especially connecting to M, because like Kaluuya is putting in the work, and like he, without saying many lines, like I'm feeling a lot from that character and his journey and what he's going through. But with M, I'm like, she kind of becomes like the hero of the story at the end of the movie. And like, I didn't feel like there was enough setup at the beginning to kind of get us to a point where we're like embracing us, like seeing this hero that takes over the movie. So I kind of wanted more from that, like more emotional human journey and the sibling dynamic that's not quite paid off
Yeah, so I agree with
effectively
that.
there.
I agree with that, and then in the same vein, I really enjoyed the insane cinematographer character, but the way that he just sort of comes out of nowhere toward the end of this movie is absolutely batshit, and it's fun, but it also would have been, I don't know, I would have appreciated a little warning. Like,
So that's where I thought that
it's
you
so
were actually going to
strange.
go with the felt like something was cut for time, because that was, I don't know, the sibling thing. I think that it's just Kaluuya and Keke Palmer, that they just have really good chemistry together, that I didn't really ever have an issue with their relationship or with like how Keke kind of, I mean, they both saved the day in their own way. Um, and then we have like literally again wearing your influences on your sleeve, just straight up like the end of The Searchers of just like the John Wayne shot of Daniel Kaluuya on the horse there, like just really going all in on that for the John Fordisms. But the, if anything, the cinematographer character, I get that he, you know, he's was once a great cinematographer, is now resigned to like work on commercials, I guess, and just watch animals killing each other for fun.
That's Jordan Peele being like, here's a hint. Here's a little hint for you. So like what's on my mind with this movie.
So why is he so into like, yeah, you guys were very vague on this phone call, but I'll definitely come out for a job that you aren't going to pay me
The
for.
way that he understands what they're talking about.
That's the biggest leap of faith in this entire movie, is like,
If someone called me and
why
said what
he
they were
should know.
saying, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, you have aliens in your backyard."
Well, he gets there and he's already like staring at the cloud. So it's like they yada a lot of that in between stuff. You're kind of just
that.
filling the gaps.
Well, not that. No, it's the getting him there, where it's just like, why would he show up? He's just like, yeah, remember that, like that weird, like those two horse people who you met that didn't end up being involved in the commercial you're shooting at all.
They got kicked out because they destroyed
They're
the
now
set.
calling you and they're like, hey, there's an alien at our place.
Well, they didn't even say that, is what's so crazy. They were so vague. They were just like,
The stuff
you know,
that
that
dreams are made of.
yeah, you know that one moment everyone just would die to get it on camera. He's like, "Oh yeah,
Listen.
aliens for sure."
It's like, hey, are you a big Lin-Manuel Miranda fan? Do you not want to throw away your shot?
I am gonna be inspired by this man to take up old-timey cameras now. I'm that's gonna be my new thing. I'm gonna be
Just-
an old-timey camera guy. That's gonna we're gonna shoot the pod on like celluloid now.
No, well, I was expecting for us to fully get through this podcast and you'd be like, it's golden hour. We have to keep recording.
I mean, that dude, that'd be me. I'd get sucked up into that thing so quick. It's funny though, because it's like you think he's doing it to get a better shot than the one he just got, but then he immediately gets fucking sucked up. Like no one's gonna recover.
Did they have
film.
the film footage? Did the film get sucked up or no? Is that safe? Because
Unclear.
if so, like, talk about unanswerable question thing. That guy fucked up everything. Because let me tell you, one photo from like a weird well that you wind a lever and it takes the photo above you that you see the alien.
That's not
proving
shot.
the aliens exist.
That's not
the
Oprah.
shots that this man's panning around with. Getting,
That's the
that,
shit.
if anything, is proving. And because the fucking lighting is wrong, this guy's fucking it up for everybody.
All right. Two quick things before we wrap up here. I guess they're two sides of the same thing. The Scorpion King crew hoodie that Kaluuya wears.
So good.
And the Steven Yeun UFO red jacket. Just
Sick.
Incredible
Great
costume
fits.
design work. Like
I love
shit.
that theme park, the little theme park in general, and how it sort of, you know, encapsulates the the plot of the movie and its theme, because it's just cowboy alien theme park.
Yeah.
Very
Perfect.
fun.
It's
All right,
themed after
any
the
other
film
thoughts?
Cowboys and Aliens, is what you're saying, right?
Oh yeah. Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig. We love
It's
them.
a Wild
Jon
Wild West
Favreau.
world.
Any last thoughts on Nope, boys?
No, I really, really loved it. I don't know. I just want to urge anyone who's sort of upset that they had to like toss this around in their head a bunch and still didn't come up with the right answers. I used to be like that with movies. I used to want every loose end to be tied up. I thought that if a movie left me confused, it had failed, and that is really incorrect. Not like objectively, of course. It's just if once you get over that hump, you can really expose yourself to some good ass fucking cinema if you're not wanting everything to be spoon fed into your fucking mouth. You know what I mean? And
It's
I don't mean
easier-
to condescend.
Easier said than done.
I know.
See Alex Garland's Men from earlier this year, where a
That's the
similar
thing.
Man,
thing
talk
happened.
about
that's
a movie
also
that
the
might have
thing.
aged worse as it's been sitting in my brain.
Also, there are a lot of movies that leave you upset because of how vague they are, and those are just bad vague movies. But there's a way to do
Yeah.
it right, and I would argue that
It's-
this movie did it almost entirely right. I love it.
It's why, despite using the phrase Lynchian, I kind of like revulse a little bit whenever I hear other people describe things as Lynchian, because it's like, oh, cool, so it's just vague, and usually you're describing a bad thing whenever you hear it's like bad and open ended, and you don't actually understand what Lynchian truly means. But no, this movie rocks. I think I like it even more after talking through it again.
I know,
It's a
me
movie
too.
that the more that I talk and the more that I think about, I'm just like, God, this movie fucking rules. Because this is the thing, is like there's all these grand ideas and big things that we talked about, but it's also just so much fun. Like it's just a blast. I love it. I cannot wait to see this movie again.
All right,
Hell yeah.
let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Please rate, review, subscribe, like, and comment, and let us know what you thought of Nope. Thank you, beautiful donors, for donating. Please check out webottomike.net for the full archive. And you can also become a donor there. Join the fam, the Wabam fam. Next week, we got Flubber getting back to Robin with a big old classic, a green, translucent, kind of sexy, kind of horny.
It's gonna be an unhinged episode. I'm excited for that discussion because that's an unhinged movie. So,
And yeah, besides that, we're kind of back in the Robin full swing. Good Will Hunting, bunch of other really good big ones coming up, because there's not too much else on the horizon. We are definitely planning on bringing you a Better Call Saul ep with the series finale of Better Call Saul around the corner, which, by the way, after last week's episode of Better Call Saul, I can't make the yup joke anymore about Nope. Yup is forever ruined for me after this week's Better Call Saul.
Yeah, as a fan of Storage Wars, I got to say the same thing. It's ruined by that one guy who always goes
Yep.
as just someone who's witnessed the discord of YEP versus YUP online,
Mhm.
I have
Brutal.
to sit out on this one.
Yeah.
Are you guys YEP or YUP yeppers?
It depends on the mood. You know, if
Are
I'm
you more
trying
like a yip or like a yup?
I say yup.
Yeah, I think yup is more like tongue in cheek. Yup is more like affirmative.
Yeah, I feel like as I'm moving into my 30s, I'm becoming more of a yip versus a yup.
Yep.
Yeah, I had two E's in there. I'm a yeep.
Also, at some point, we got to talk rehearsal, boys. HBO,
Oh.
Nathan Fielder.
Man.
It's the show right now. It's a doozy. And yeah, I think it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah, it's
So-
only
I'm gonna have to collect
unfortunately.
myself
Yeah.
to talk about it.
So when it ends,
We
we're
have to
gonna
wait for it to wrap because
It's a journey.
just-
It's a journey.
Oh man.
All right. Thank
show.
you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.